Welcome to Retirement Rescue Radio, a show specifically designed to help retirees and pre-retirees maximize their financial efficiency so you can live the retirement lifestyle you've always imagined. Your host is Nate Miller, investment advisor representative and author of the CPR Retirement Rescue Roadmap. Nate discusses thoughts and ideas from some of today's most knowledgeable professionals in the field of finance. He offers strategies along the way to help you make better financial decisions so you can maximize your retirement. This is Retirement Rescue Radio.
Well, hey there, and welcome to another episode of Retirement Rescue Radio. I'm your host, Nate Miller, and today we're going to be talking about, will the Biden presidency influence stock markets? So we're going to be looking at parties, politics, potential returns, and even though we are talking about politics and Biden, who's a Democrat, I'm going to try to keep this as completely I want to say middle of the aisle as I really can, because I've always told people that we don't invest based off of who's in the office, right? So we invest based off of, investment triggers, economic triggers. So it really doesn't matter. So what we're going to do, let's have a little history lesson today of what the markets did in the past, whether a Republican was in office or whether a Democrat was in office, and let's analyze some of that data. And we actually have a white paper that goes along with this that has that same title, as Will the Biden Presidency Influence the Stock Markets? And so if you want that white paper, that is going to be the giveaway today. And so that should be in the show notes if you're listening to this on your podcast app, or if you're on YouTube, it'll be in the description in the comments section somewhere. Same thing if you're listening to this maybe on LinkedIn or anything like that. And so first thing I really want to do is we've got information here in this white paper with history of what the S&P 500 did for every single presidency, whether they were Republican, whether they were Democrat, first term, second term, all of that, right? And so what we know is, Biden took office January 20th of 2021, and the country was still divided over the election and whether or not he actually got it, and all that craziness that went on. But one thing can't be disputed is history shows that markets have performed equally well under both Republican and Democratic leadership. And so as the U.S. Continues to grapple with the pandemic and the recovery of that, we're beginning to learn more and more about Biden's policies and priorities. So no matter what the political views, though, investors are anxious to see, how a new administration could potentially impact the markets and potentially the returns, in the next 4 years. So let's look at how this works. I'm not going to go through every single one. We've got, like I said, history of the S&P 500 all the way back to when Eisenhower was president. And each year in this white paper, it lists the president, whether they're Republican or Democrat, and then it shows what the stock market returned, either positive or negative, for that term. So if they were a two-term president, they've got two lines. Like Eisenhower is the first one. He's got Eisenhower 1, R for Republican. First term went up 70.7%. That's awesome. Second term up 34.3%. Right. Awesome. Eisenhower kicked butt. It's fun. But here's the thing. The market, it's not really the president that determines what the markets do, guys. A lot of the presidents would like to take credit for a market that's performing well and deflect the blame for one that's declining, right? And so it's actually Congress that really has more influence over the market's activities. They're the ones that establish tax laws and pass spending bills. And I know ultimately it does get to the president, but they're the ones that are really starting all that stuff. So let's go through some of the numbers here, because since I am a numbers geek and I love spreadsheets and all that stuff. So yeah, Eisenhower's up. Kennedy Johnson, actually, since Kennedy was assassinated, Democrat, it was up 44.3%. So when we analyze all of this right now, there was really only 3 terms, 3 presidential terms where the market was actually down at the end of those terms. And unfortunately, guys, if you're Republican out there, all 3 of them are Republicans. If you're Democrats, you love to hear that, right? It's like, oh, no, only the Republicans. So, but we have to analyze that information a little bit more. One, since there's only 3 of them, I'll go through. One of them was Nixon Ford, and so that was down 13.3% at the end of that 4-year term. The other 2 terms were both Bush Jr. Yeah. And so he had the unlucky, I want to say luck, really, the luck of getting in office in 2000 for his first term. And then what happened in 2000, the dot-com bubble happened. That, boom, done, right? And so then 2004 is starting to maybe come back. So it was down 12.5% at the beginning of his first term, or sorry, at the end of his first term, it was still down 12.5%. Still hadn't quite recovered yet. Well, then he gets out in 2008. And what happened in 2008? Exactly. It's like the financial crisis. And so he gets out on a downward trend too. And it was down by the time he got out, 31.5%. Yeah, 31.5%. So just really unlucky to have been the president during that period of time, in my opinion. So it's like, I don't think anybody can stand here and say that the markets were a direct result of any president. Right. It's like Trump likes to call it the Trump bump. It's like, it's not necessarily him that caused all of it. Right. And even Biden, it's currently up right now. But so think about that, guys. The stock market has been on average up at the end of every single presidential term, except for 3 throughout history. And 2 of those 3 were the dot-com bubble and the financial crisis. Every other 4-year period, the stock market has been up. Not only that, let's take a look at the averages. The average growth, we'll just say over that 4-year period for Republicans, even though they had those 3 bad years, was 28.27%. So on average, when a Republican hits office, 4 years later, that market is going to be up almost 30%. That's the average. So pretty good, right? However, the Democrats kind of blow that away but once again, think about this. They've got the Republicans have those 12.5, the losses that Bush had and the losses that Nixon, those are counted into that average. So those are dragging those averages down quite a bit. Democrats would be 47.64%. Yeah. So almost a full 20% higher than Republicans on average, once again, average. And you know how I feel about averages. So anyway, so it's interesting. I've always got clients or prospective clients that are fearful of someone getting into office. And then I could have a meeting the very next hour with someone else that's fearful of the other guy getting in office. And they want to make investing decisions based off of who they are afraid of. If who they are afraid of gets in office, they're like, I want to move all to cash, or I want to move all to bonds, or whatever it is, whatever their rationale is, they want to make huge investing decisions based on who gets into office. And it's all based off of emotion. It's not based off of numbers and statistics. Because you can imagine, look back in history, every time someone new got into office, whether it changed regimes, right, from Republican to Democrat or Democrat to Republican, there's always going to be somebody on the other side of that has said the same thing. And 4 years later, other than 3 times throughout history, the stock market's been up every time. And so those feelings are unfounded. So even though the Congress does have more influence over the market activities than the president does have some indirect influence on the economy. He does appoint policymakers, right? So he's going to appoint individuals to a variety of different positions like cabinet secretaries, heads of departments like labor and commerce. And he also nominates the chairperson for the Federal Reserve, which is not really correctly titled because it's not a federal agency. It is an independent agency that sets monetary policy for the U.S., even though it's called the Federal Reserve. So he also affects international relationships. And as we saw in 2019 and early 2020, markets did respond positively after the U.S. and China tentatively reached a trade agreement. And so, I mean, you all remember that China trade war debacle. It's like, it was almost like the U.S. Stock market was going up and down based on whatever was going. Do we have a deal? Are we going to get close to a deal? Oh, we're not close to a deal. It's like, so it was a lot of volatility, but ultimately it still ended up positive, right? And he can have an effect on new laws. I know the House and the Senate introduce and pass bills. All new legislation does ultimately come to the president, and he can either sign it into law or veto it. So we know that. And the president's team can influence members of Congress to introduce new legislation. So that could drive markets. But looking into, say the next 4 years or so, COVID has completely wreaked havoc on the U.S. economy. So economic shutdowns, that led to unemployment levels rising from business closures, some of which are not going to come back. Americans stayed close to home, especially in the early days of the pandemic, and that resulted in a lot of decreased spending. And then Congress tries throwing trillion. They shut the economy down. You should listen to my podcast interview with John Tamney. So they shut the economy down, and then they try throwing trillions of dollars back at it to get it started again, when they should have just, in Tamney's opinion, not shut it down and let everything run its course and let us actually get feedback, our own feedback on what we should do for ourselves, instead of having it legislated to us. But that's a whole nother argument there. But there's still a long way to go. The U.S. has made some strides towards recovery. Pandemic's full effects may not be known for, quite some time. Industries that were hit hard by the shutdowns, like retail, hospitality, and even travel, might still struggle to recoup all those losses. And also because there's probably going to be some permanent changes that are going to have to be put into place to accommodate the consumers' post-pandemic preferences as well. And also individuals that experience long periods of unemployment could experience hardships as they work to pay off the bills and catch up on retirement savings as well. So there's still a lot of uncertainties that remain as we regroup and rebuild over the next few years. But one thing is certain: a one-party Congress and presidency does make it easier for new policies to get pushed through. And so in light of the government's recent spending, stimulus packages, and all of that, the big question on people's mind is, what about taxes? Well, increased taxes are likely to be at the top of the list for discussion from about anybody. Right. They can be of particular concern to y'all, investors who wish to retire in the next decade or so, as higher tax rates could potentially impact your individual retirement plans. And once again, let's look at history. So we've got another history lesson here. What have the tax rates really looked like through time? The Tax Cut and Job Acts of 2017 set the top tax rate for top earners at 37%. But how does that compare to other periods of history? So, and this is just U.S. history. This isn't tax rates, across the world. This is just going to be in the U.S. All right. So back to 1913, which is actually when the Federal Reserve was created. So 1913, Americans whose taxable income was $500,000 or more were charged 7% taxes. 7, guys. Think about that. Right now, the first tax bracket, so the lowest tax bracket that we have today, starts at 10%. And back in 1913, the top tax bracket was 7. Right now, the top tax bracket is still 37%. Back in 1913, 7%. Yeah, a lot different there, but not the highest it's ever been. The Great Depression, at the start of it, the tax rate was top tax rate was 25%. In 1932, Congress raised the top tax rate to 63%. So that's making the 37% look pretty darn good now, right? But wait a minute, it gets worse. So 1944, guys, during World War II, the top tax rate was 94%. 94%. 94% for Americans who had taxable income of $200,000 or more. And that lasted for quite a while, actually. And if you were unlucky enough at that point to live in California with a 6% state tax, bam, if you made more than $200,000, you got nothing above $200,000. Yeah. So that was not good. So top tax rate of 94%, guys. That's where we have been in history. So could we go back to that? We could. Top tax rates. And remember, 200,000 was what they used there. The problem with attacking, quote, the rich, which the Democrats have said that they want to tax the rich, is who's defining the rich. I believe episode 79 of mine is the rich are not as rich as you think they are. Right. And so when someone else gets to define who is rich, well, they can just keep ratcheting that whichever direction they want that to go. And so people that may not think of themselves as rich, federal government may think of them as rich and tax them as such. You might be seeing yourself with a 94% tax rate if you're making too much money for those that decide who is rich. Okay. 1950s through the 1970s, the federal income tax rate never dropped below 70%. 70. That is nuts. That's 37 is our top right now. It's almost double, right? The Tax Reform Act of 1986 dropped the top tax rate to 28%. This is one of the big things that Reagan did want to do, was lower that. And he was one of those that was caught into that trap of living in California. And so he made 2 movies a year when he was back making movies, because he'd make about $100,000 a movie. So why make any more? Because state of California and the federal government gets the rest. So yeah. So the Tax Reform Act of 86 did drop it to 28%, but in 88 it was raised again. He dropped it in 1988, and they were raised again in 1991. So yeah. And then from 91, you go all the way to 2013, and it was from 2013 to 2017. There was the introduction of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, and the top federal income tax rate jumped to 43.4. Then here, most recently, we had the Tax Cut and Job Act of 2017, which started in 2018. And so that dropped the highest tax rate to 37%. However, an additional 3.8% is still applied because of that Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. Some people call it the Medicare surplus tax or whatever, right? So it still or investment surplus tax. We still have that extra 3.8% there, and that's applied to that highest bracket. So that actually brings our top federal income tax rate to 40.8, not 37. So with a good perspective on history, we can have a better understanding of, the past, present, and thus a clear vision for the future. So tax rates have been all over the map, guys. They can go higher. They have in the past. And if they have in the past, that just means it's that much easier to do it in the future, in my opinion. And so how do you prepare for that? Well, there are some certain things that you can do between now and when something like that might happen. I mean, we know right now that the Tax Cut and Job Act does expire in 2026. And so we know even if Congress does nothing, all of the other tax brackets are increasing. Right now, there's 10, 12, 22, 24. Well, it would go from 10, it would go back up to 10, 15, 25, 28. And those income levels are lower as well. So you're taxed at higher levels at lower incomes too. So, and that's if Congress does nothing, they're going to revert back to that. And then if they do anything, I don't think they're going to keep going down. I think they're going to go the other way. And that's just my own personal opinion. And so if you can, right now, taxes are kind of on sale if you look back in history of what we just went through. So if there are some moves that somebody wants to make, whether or not it makes sense for them, we can figure that out. So if you are looking to maybe work with someone that can put some of that tax planning into place, get a hold of us, even though the giveaway is going to be the white paper of the will the Biden presidency affect my retirement. Then there's also going to be a link to a 15-minute phone call with us. You can click on that link. You'll have access to our calendar. You'll be able to figure out when you've got about 15 minutes. Get a hold of us so we can start working with a tax plan. So if you're concerned taxes are going to go up, let's do something about it. That's one of the areas investors or advisors, talk about investment diversification so much, but you hear far less about tax diversification. So many people that we meet are not very diversified in their tax situation. And most people, if I ask, do you think the taxes are going to increase or decrease in the future? Almost every single one of them thinks that they're going to increase, but they're not set up in line with what they feel is going to happen. And so what we want to do is align their portfolios more in line with what they actually feel is going to happen and what we feel is going to happen in the future as well. We want to make you more tax diversified as well, so that you can keep more of it in your own pocket and give less of it to Uncle Sam. Because by definition, all government spending is third-party spending. What does that mean? Well, let's define first party, second party, third party. Let's define that type of spending. First party spending would be, I am going to use my money to buy something for myself. And that's like, it's my birthday's coming up or something. It's not, my birthday's already passed, but let's say your birthday's coming up and you're like, I'm going to get myself something nice, right? But it's your money still that you're using. And since you're buying it for yourself, you care about two things. You care about the quality of it because you're buying it for yourself, and you care about the price of it because you're using your own money. So you care about the quality and you care about the price. That's first party spending. The second party spending would be, you're still using your money, but you're buying something for someone else. So think someone else's birthday is coming up. And so now you care still about the price because you're still using your own money. But think about this, you probably care just a teeny tiny bit less about the quality of it. And so what that means is that introduces a little bit of waste, right? So because now the quality is not quite as good, or the price maybe is lower or whatever. You're still using your money, so the price is you're still concerned about that, but you're not as concerned about the quality. Next step, third-party spending. Third-party spending is you are not using your own money and you are not buying something for yourself. You are using someone else's money to buy something for someone else. So now you care less about the price and you care less about the quality. And so if you care less about both price and quality, you could see how you could just spend whatever you want to on something, not really care how much it costs, and the quality might not be where it should be. And so that is where a lot of waste comes into play, is because now we don't care as much about the price and we don't care as much about the quality. And so as we go down those steps, you can see that all government spending is third-party spending. And so therefore, based on the logic of this argument, that means that has the most amount of waste in it. And so I know we have to pay taxes for the infrastructure, we have to do all that but excessive taxation is something I am not a big fan of. Because I believe that I can do more and better things with my money than what the government can. I can spend my money better on better things than what the government can. That's my own personal belief there. And so I still think, we do still need to pay taxes for the things that we need to pay taxes, but not a penny more than what we are legally obligated to pay. That's it. We want to help people pay the least amount of taxes that they are legally obligated to pay. All right. I think that's about it for today. So, over these next 4 years, if we look back in history, at the end of Biden's term, the market is going to be up. Now, it's not going to be a straight shot. It never is. There's going to be a lot of things that can lead to volatility. A lot of these tax bills that he's got going in, since they are targeted at rich and business owners, that could affect the market in the short term. We could see a lot of volatility, some small corrections that could happen throughout the year, this year before this year is even done. Because think about it from a small business standpoint right now. If I'm going to be charged an extra $50,000 in taxes this year, well, guess what? That's probably another employee that I'm not going to hire, because that has to go to Uncle Sam. So that has an effect on the economy. Taxes definitely have an effect on the economy. So that's it. I'm going to start rambling here if I don't shut it down. So that's it. Once again, remember the white paper. If you want to click on that link, download that, get the white paper that says, will the Biden presidency influence stock markets? And you can have that. And then also, if you do want us to take a look at your tax situation to find out if we can get you more tax diversified so that we can help you pay the least amount of taxes that you're legally obligated to pay, click on our link, get some time on our calendar, 15 minutes just to find out whether or not we can do anything for you. So, and then if we do realize that there is some more stuff that we need to go through, then we can set another visit. Maybe that's in office, maybe that's Zoom, virtual. Of course, especially if you're listening to this like in, California or Maryland or Florida or wherever you end up being, it's definitely going to be virtual. So that's it, guys. Always want to bring you more content to empower you to live the retirement you deserve. So take care, and we'll see you again next week.